Morning, everyone. So, we're going to be discussing Boris Johnson's latest antics yesterday when he threw a fox into the chicken house. I was all set today to talk about Labour's environmental policies. And then Boris Johnson went, no, you pay attention to me. So, okay, then. So for those who don't know, let's just catch up with what's happened. So this is related to the COVID inquiry. This is a public inquiry that the government set up in order to stop people asking lots of awkward questions so that they could go, oh, just leave it for the inquiry, shall we? Yes, I know you've got questions, very good questions, but we will wait for the inquiry, knowing full well the inquiry will take a long time. This is the public inquiry into handling of COVID. It's got fairly wide terms of reference as well. And but recently, the chair of the inquiry, a former judge, they're always retired judges. This one's got a fairly impressive background. Heather Hallett, Baroness Hallett, KC. She has been trying to get information from the government, records, minutes of meetings, things like that. And the government have been handed over heavily redacted. Well, first of all, they've been doing two things to try and distract her. First of all, they've been sending absolutely loads of stuff, completely snowballing her with loads of irrelevant crap for her to work through. But secondly, they've also, in terms of the stuff she really wants, they've been sending it in heavily redacted form. And how heavily redacted? Basically blank pages. So she's not impressed with this, as she said, look, I want all this stuff. And she gave them a deadline till Tuesday. And she said she's going to take the government to court. She'll seek a judicial review if they don't hand it over. And nobody thinks, really, when I've seen independent experts like legal experts talking about it, nobody seriously thinks the government have got much of a leg to stand on. It's not impossible for them to win. It depends on exactly the nature of what Hallett's asking for. But then what happened is the Cabinet Office, when threatened with court, said, we don't actually have this information, sorry, which was a bit odd because this is the first time they've tried to say they didn't have it. So then what the judge said, she was quite sneaky. First of all, she's extended the deadline until 4 p.m. today. The Cabinet Office asked for next Monday, and she said, no, you can have till 4 p.m. on Thursday. But she did something else as well, which was quite cunning. She basically said to them, oh, so you say you don't have this information? Right then. So you can all sign witness statements to that effect. And what that would mean is people in the Cabinet Office, senior officials, maybe even ministers, but senior officials really, would have to sign a witness statement to say that they do not have the information being asked for. If they're found out to have lied later on, that they can be charged with perjury because these witness statements would have power of perjury. And this is what caused the prorogation trial to fall, remember, in 2019. Ultimately, why the government lost that case was because they refused to sign affidavits, basically, giving the reasons. So Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg gave their reasons for proroguing Parliament publicly, but they wouldn't do it on a signed affidavit to the Supreme Court. And that is because if it had been exposed later on that they'd lied, they'd find themselves in prison. They'd be charged with perjury. It would be so serious it would carry a prison sentence. And the same thing is applying here. So I noticed those witness statements haven't been forthcoming. So you sort of got yourself, the Cabinet Office do have this stuff. They told a stupid lie. This former senior, and she was a very senior judge, has called it out. And so come Thursday, we're probably going to be expecting one of two things to happen. Either the government will just hand it over, or they will risk going to court. Now, I'll go through in a minute what the risks are with going to court. But then what happened yesterday is Boris Johnson upped the ante. So Boris Johnson, remember the Cabinet Office is saying they don't have these documents. Boris Johnson comes out yesterday and says, they do have these documents. I gave them to them. And he also said, I am absolutely fine with them handing them over to the inquiry. In fact, Boris Johnson actually said if the inquiry asked him to hand them over, he would do so. Now, in reality, he wouldn't, because that would actually be wrong. You can't, the inquiry wouldn't ask him to, I wouldn't have thought anyway, because things like this are supposed to go through government lawyers. Because, there might be something in there which is, can't be revealed in a public inquiry because of national security. There might, not as much as they're trying to redact, but there might be something which genuinely you would say shouldn't. But the point is that Boris Johnson is claiming that he has handed these documents to the Cabinet Office, and he's more than happy for the Cabinet Office to hand it over to the inquiry full and unredacted. Now, nobody, obviously Boris Johnson is known for telling the odd fib. Is this because Boris Johnson doesn't mind the public inquiry going through his records? No, certainly not. It'll be because in reality, they already have it. And Boris Johnson knows that they're going to have to hand it over anyway. Boris Johnson is just aware that it looks bad to try and conceal what they're going to get hold of anyway. Because one of two things is going to happen now. At 4 p.m. today, the government either hand over what Baroness Hallett wants, or at least they hand over something to meet the deadline, or they risk a judicial review. Now, in the case of a judicial review, what will happen? Probably the government will lose and have to hand over all the stuff, and then they look like they were trying to conceal it. So that does them reputational damage. And then the stuff comes out anyway. But let's say the government win, right? Let's say they actually win, and they might win. And you think to yourself, okay, will that really be a win for the government? It won't, because what will happen is, and remember, judicial reviews can take a little while, so you'd think a few months at least. So it'll be later this year before it reports. And then what will happen is, people will go, well, if the inquiry can't get the information that it wants, then it's not really much of an inquiry at all, is it? Which means that when Labour come to power, they can order another inquiry where they hand over everything and it comes out anyway, and the government still look really dodgy for concealing it. Because what will happen is something will come out, something dodgy will come out, and Labour will be able to say, well, we handed everything to the inquiry because we didn't have, it turns out the government lawyers didn't have an issue at all. It was ministers that had an issue, because it'll be the same government lawyers that are picking through it. And they'll say, right, that's, the Conservatives were just trying to waste your time and waste a lot of public money covering for themselves. Knackered Medic there, thank you very much. £10 super chat. But yeah, let's catch up with a few more questions before we go on to some more consequences here. Anyone still think Sunak can last a whole other year? The thing is, right, at the moment, the Tories don't want to get rid of him because there's no one to replace him with realistically. Even if they had a really good leader in the wings, they'd already be leader. Remember, Boris Johnson clung on for half a year longer than he should have last year, because they didn't have anyone credible to replace him. The ones that were making the biggest noise was Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, and they're both crap. And the Tory MPs knew they were both crap. And with the added bonus that Liz Truss was also insane. So they didn't want to get rid of Boris Johnson just because they thought, well, they knew that they needed to, but they also thought, we ain't got anyone. So they haven't got anyone. Look at what they've got at the moment. If there were to be a leadership let's say Rishi Sunak had, say, an accident and he had to resign because he had serious injuries or was in a coma or something. Something happened, and you don't want Oliver Dowden actually becoming the Prime Minister, so you have a leadership contest. Let us just imagine. Or Rishi Sunak just said, you know what, I'm off. Whatever. It's, who have they got? There's like Suella Braverman. She is, if anything, as insane as Liz Truss. She is utterly insane in a different way. You've got Penny Mordaunt that they're trying to push because she can hold a sword. And I've noticed in today's news, there's another group trying to talk positively about Stephen Barclay. Now, okay, Stephen Barclay's not insane, but he's currently the one at war with our NHS. So, that's their choice. So they haven't really got anyone. If they get rid of, if Rishi Sunak suddenly is unable to govern, they'll just have a general election earlier. I think MPs are sick of it now. What the latest today, 50 Tory MPs are demanding, led by Nadhim Zahawi, of course, are demanding that Rishi Sunak abolish inheritance tax. They're calling it a tax on the dead. It's like, well, no, it's not a tax on the dead, is it? It's a tax on the living who are inheriting. That's why it's called inheritance tax. But again, you know, what are they trying to do? They're basically urging Rishi Sunak to abolish taxes. Billions of pounds in taxes that go to the rich. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Cannot understand how Sunak isn't more unpopular. It's as simple as a tidy haircut and a nice suit. I think it's just as simple as not being, he's surrounded by idiots and he himself is not as stupid as they are. I think that's really all there is to it. You know, there's scandals everywhere, but they don't seem to stick to Sunak. Because at the end of the day, what are the main scandals with Sunak really? Or what should there be? The fact that he's very close to private healthcare, American private healthcare companies, and clearly wants to privatize the NHS. I mean, it's already privatized, but properly break it up. The fact that, you know, he keeps somehow managing to arrange budgets that make his wife richer. But this is just good old-fashioned political skullduggery. People aren't too bothered about that. Whereas you've got, you know, you've got MPs sexually assaulting people or bullying people or not paying taxes at all or having parties during lockdown. Rishi Sunak has avoided this, you know, so the really sensational stuff isn't sticking to Sunak, it's everyone else. So he's like in the eye of the storm. But isn't Sunak worth 300 million or something like that? It's at least 250 million, yeah. Oh yeah, he's the richest MP there has ever been. You know, in like contemporary financial terms, there has never been an MP as rich as Rishi Sunak is. He is incredibly wealthy. But again, something like that means that small changes to tax laws can actually make him much wealthier. So you can sort of see why he would want to go into politics. I mean, pretty much the first thing he did, admittedly it wasn't, he was just a backbench MP at the time, but he voted for a reduction in capital gains tax, which will have made him a mint as well. Why is Sunak not handing over everything? I can't see him coming out bad from it. Yes, no. The reason, right, he's not resisting the inquiry because he's trying to help Boris Johnson. He's absolutely not trying to help Boris Johnson here. He wants Boris Johnson gone. Boris Johnson is the thorn in his side. There's no love lost between them. He's not doing it for Boris Johnson. He's doing it for himself. Whatever is in these records, there's two things to think about. So first of all, whatever is in Boris Johnson's records probably incriminates everyone that was in cabinet at the time, including Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak, remember, was making decisions about budgeting. So how was he making those decisions? And the thing is, we know, if you remember, do you remember when Matt Hancock brought his book out and he made the mistake of getting Isabel Oakeshott, one of the least trusted people in journalism, as if that's not an untrustworthy enough profession, to ghostwrite it, which meant he handed over a load of stuff he shouldn't have handed over, really, but all of his messages, WhatsApp messages, stuff like that, so that she could write the book for him. And then she did the dirty and published a load of it. Do you remember that? The Hancock Diaries thing. Well, we could see from some of the WhatsApp messages that she published just how unprofessional, not just Hancock, but lots of others like Simon Case, the cabinet secretary, and others were. You know, the reason they used WhatsApp messaging is because it's supposed to be an easier way to get to destroy messages. All you have to do is lose your phone, they say, drop it in the sea, like was it Rebecca Vardy or something? But they were being so open with these WhatsApp messages. There was no discretion at all in them. So can you imagine what sort of what we would get with Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages? Can you imagine what would be in there? It would be absolutely horrendous for Sunak. And the other thing as well, so it's not just what's in these messages. If Sunak hands over all of the messages that Hallett is asking for in largely unredacted form, maybe, as I say, there's the odd case where there genuinely needs to be a redaction, but in largely unredacted form, then she hasn't finished. She will then ask for others. She'll ask for Rishi Sunak's WhatsApp messages. She'll ask for Grant Shapps' WhatsApp messages. She'll ask for Theresa Coffey's WhatsApp messages. Oliver Dowden, is Deputy Prime Minister now, but he was Tory party chair as well, or co-chair. So he was in cabinet. So, this could look very bad, not just for Sunak, but for his current cabinet as well. Suella Braverman was in cabinet at the time. She was the Attorney General then. There's a lot of stuff could come out here. So, it will be partly because whatever is in these messages could personally implicate Sunak. And remember, at the moment, the Tories' best chance next year of at least limiting the damage in the election is that Rishi Sunak is reasonably popular comparatively. His party isn't. The Conservative Party brand is dead. But Rishi Sunak is a lot of the public actually quite like him for whatever reason. If Rishi Sunak ends up with major reputational damage out of whatever comes out of these messages, they're buggered, completely buggered. I'm saying that if I were to compare Bojo and Rishi Sunak to Harry Potter characters, say Bojo's like a more egotistical James Potter, Rishi's more intelligent Peter Pettigrew. No, because I think James Potter, although obviously was a bit of a bully, was not an unkind person in it. Boris Johnson is deeply unpleasant. I don't even know who he would be. Sunak was the bloke who came up with Eat Out to help out and use furlough to pay people to spread COVID in the workplace. Well, the point of furlough was to avoid them doing that. But the Eat Out to help out, certainly. One thing Rishi Sunak will not want, it's already out, but what he won't want the public inquiry to be focusing on is the fact that Eat Out to help out was known to create the rapid level of reinfections which led to the second lockdown. And of course, because they delayed that second lockdown, it lasted a lot longer and wiped out Christmas. They were being told. And the other thing that will come out of this public inquiry as well, which Sunak and everyone else is desperate to avoid, they didn't follow the science. They didn't listen to their scientists. They weren't led by the science. Anyone with above GCSE science level knowledge knows that they did not follow the science at all, because they were doing everything wrong. The best that, they were absolutely everything wrong. But anyway, to lose a WhatsApp message, you need to not just drop your own phone in the sea, but also drop the phones of everyone you ever WhatsApped. Yeah, but everyone else within the chain would also be implicated. So I don't think any of it, they'll just go on a Tory cruise, one of these cruises around the North Atlantic or something like that, and go, oh, we all dropped our phones in the sea. Isn't that really? Wasn't that a shocking clumsiness? I don't think the public likes Sunak. He was fined for lockdown breaches and don't think anyone's forgotten about his wife's non-dom states while he was Chancellor. You say that, but the polling suggests he's way more popular than his party. His popularity, no politicians are really popular at the moment in terms of the main ones. But as politicians go, Rishi Sunak's popularity is not that negative compared to others, certainly. If we compare it to other, in fact, I had a list of them a little while ago. Jeremy Hunt is way less popular than Rishi Sunak, for example. Suella Braverman is way less popular than Rishi Sunak. So Sunak, although he's got a negative approval rating, compared to others in the Tory party, it's actually not bad. Maggie May, thank you very much for the super chat there. Boris Johnson's Gilderoy Lockman. Or is it Lockhart? Is he the one, the Chamber of Secrets one? The narcissist, yes. Possibly, yes. with the physical cowardice to go with it as well. The messages are backed up in your accounts, the phone is irrelevant. Well, that's what I thought as well. I'm not really an expert on WhatsApp, but I do know the government have gotten away with this before. They have gotten away with saying they've lost WhatsApp messages because they changed their phone. And I know at the time people would say, really, that doesn't matter. But they got away with it. So they did get away with saying that. Andre Sunak is a very nasty piece of work. He's certainly a very cynical piece of work. He's in politics clearly just to make himself and his family richer. That's really all there is to it. That's all he's in politics for. And the proof of it, I mean, we can get the proof of it. After next year, when he loses, he'll have to step down as Tory leader, at which point there'll be no route back for him to government because his party will be in opposition for some time. And when his party eventually does come back to government, he won't be part of it because his reputation will be mud. So the real proof of it will be, will Rishi Sunak stay as an MP? If he resigns as an MP, it's because he was only in politics to make money. When Phil smiles, it reminds me of Norman Bates in a motel. Oh, isn't that nice? It's like saying cat turds are more popular than dog turds. They're not, though. Cat turds, you smell it. Cat turds are vile. They're evil. The reason we've got a cat, I don't know why, nothing to do with me, but the reason we don't let the cat wander around the house, she has her own little annex. She's got like the west wing. It's technically the southeast wing. We don't let her run around that because she shits and pisses everywhere except where she's supposed to. So, and that's why, because it's vile. Like a dog turd, you just pick it up and deal with it. But anyway, never mind. Can I believe government issues on tax payer time is done on WhatsApp where it can be deleted and kept secret? What sort of shit show is that? Oh yeah, the way the government have been, they shouldn't be using WhatsApp messaging at all for government business at all. It is a very obvious attempt to avoid being accountable. So what's supposed to happen is, like if they have a meeting, there has to be minutes taken of the meeting, right? They don't have to be released to the public, but minutes do have to be taken. If there's obviously, if they're going to emails kept as records by the civil service. So the reason they use WhatsApp messages is because it's not automatically then kept as a record by the civil service. There's no real rules around WhatsApp messaging. That's why they're using it. It's totally unethical. They shouldn't be doing it because it's a way of having conversations that can then be deleted, even though they haven't deleted them. They've kept them, which is why they can come out now. But, you know, there it is. You say cats can be house trained. This one can't. Mental. It's inbred. I think that's the problem. It was very badly inbred. But there we go. But yeah, all conversations should be held on open platform because scrutiny time we choose. Well, the usual way is you can have, like in any organization, emails, they're saved, they're recorded. There's no dropping your like server into the sea. There's yeah, sorry, we dropped the mainframe into the sea. It's terribly clumsy of me. No, that doesn't happen. Or when you have meetings, there will be a secretary there recording what was said, or at least the minutes. So not every word, but, you know, recording what was said, what was agreed. So again, you've got a case there. But have we noticed everything Johnson touches turns to shit? Yeah, we do. We do notice that. And I'll tell you another thing. Everyone who has anything to do with Boris Johnson ends up having their reputation destroyed. Everyone. Anyone at all who has anything to do with Boris Johnson ends up with their reputation in tatters at the end of it. Because what we can see right now is Boris Johnson doing exactly what people warned the Conservatives. When Conservatives made Boris Johnson their leader, There were people at the time, I was one of them, but there were lots of people much more prominent than me saying the Conservatives are going to regret this. They are going to regret it because Boris Johnson doesn't give a crap about them. He doesn't care about his party. He doesn't care about MPs. He doesn't care about anyone. You know, this is a man, we didn't know this at the time because this happened after he was made leader. This is a man whose wife told him she had cancer, and his immediate thought was, right, how do I divorce you and then marry my mistress? That was what Boris Johnson did to that news. Wife's got cancer, time to ditch you and get me a new wife. I mean, that's absolutely, that's what he is. And he's now taking the view, if he's going down, he's taking everyone else with him. Everyone else with him. He hasn't suddenly handed over all this stuff to the Cabinet Office. He says they've had it for months. I believe that. They have had it. He knows he's got no control over it. He can't stop it. So given that he can't stop it, he might as well claim that he's more than happy for the inquiry to have this information. He's not more than happy for them to have it, but he knows he can't control that. So it's what you would do. You would naturally do it. If you can't stop some information coming out, then just say you're happy for it to come out. Why would you try and look shifty? Whereas Sunak is the one who does have some level of control. So he can try and block it. The court, a senior judge might stop it. It might be that even if he wins his court case and can block at least some of this information, the Labour just, when they're in government, say, well, you didn't do this inquiry properly, so we'll do it properly. And it'll all still come out. But the thing is, Sunak probably cares more about what comes out before the election, because after the election, he's gone. He'll be riding off into the sunset, probably going back to America if they'll have him back again. But yeah, Alec, thank you for the super chat there, £5. So it sounds like you have a toilet untrained housemate, Phil, still better than Johnson. Yeah, yes. Oh, I would rather live with the cat than Boris Johnson. Although possibly Boris Johnson would far rather live with our cat than me as well, because he would not have a comfortable life. But anyway, change the PRA to include private messages, must be kept 2-year minimum prison sentence for breaches. There absolutely needs to be some modernisation of it, you know, to take account of different platforms that are used now. I mean, this, you know, it is a general problem with our civil service that it takes far too long to keep up to date. But obviously, because the government are deliberate, they are the ones abusing this. So obviously, they're not going to allow any rules changes. The civil service can't change its own rules independent of government. But there we go. Yeah, Johnson has the reverse Midas touch. Absolutely. Absolutely anyone and anything he comes into contact with ends up as a right mess, a complete mess. And what he's doing now is and he knows, and everyone knows, that what Boris Johnson is doing here is further damaging the Conservative Party brand. Because what he's doing is he's saying, I'm happy for these messages to go to the inquiry. So a member of the public thinks, oh, well, there can't be anything incriminating in it, can they? If they take Boris Johnson at his word, they will think, well, he doesn't think there's anything incriminating. So why is Rishi Sunak blocking it? Oh, maybe it's because it's incriminating to Rishi Sunak, not Boris Johnson. And obviously, if you then start to make the current leader look shifty, you're making the whole Conservative Party look shifty. You know, this is Boris Johnson, for his own spiteful revenge, making it much harder for the Conservatives, as if they weren't making it hard enough for themselves, to even limit the damage in next year's election, even limit the damage. So, you know, we're going to have some spicy times coming. But as I say, in terms of today, one of two things will happen, because there's a 4 p.m. deadline today, after which presumably this judge is going to say, right, I'm going to order a judicial review. So either the Cabinet Office hand over something, they may not hand over all of it, they may just hand over enough to keep her quiet for a bit. So they'll hand over something, and she'll either be happy with it or not, or she'll come back for more. Or they'll say, no, this is not right. And then they risk a judicial review. And the judicial review cannot go their way. They either lose it, in which case it all comes out and they look shifty, or they win it and they still look shifty, and Labour say, well, we will just order a proper inquiry when we come to power. And then, although Sunak will be gone, the Conservative Party will continue to look seedy as hell. But there we go. We're saying, I think we had 20 years of normalising psychopaths. They're just mad around the edges. Johnson, almost harmless by his low standards. No, Boris Johnson is the most dangerous person we've ever allowed near the top of government. More so than Liz Truss, because Liz Truss was so insane that they couldn't possibly leave her there for more than a few weeks. Because Boris Johnson, they let there for years, absolutely years. But anyway, there we go. That's what we'll say on that one so far. We will obviously keep an eye on this one because something's going to happen today. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to click the like button and to subscribe. And you can check in the comments below if you want to join Patreon for the channel. And have a good day, everyone. Until next time, I'll see you later.